recently I had a fella contact me about a situation he encountered. He had built 2 kites from one of my plans from online. Both kites he built identically the same, or so he thought. They looked the same, used the same materials, but when he went to fly them, they didn't fly the same, not even close. One flew very well, the other one would hardly even fly. So he wrote and asked me what I thought might be the trouble. And what did he do when he built it that caused this kind of discrepancy from one kite to another? Following the same plan, using the same materials, how could that happen? Well, he was making a North American fighter kite, which is what I make, and it uses a carbon fiber bow, and in some cases carbon fiber for the spine. In this particular kite I have a bamboo spine, but if I were to use carbon fiber, generally speaking, I use a piece of flat carbon fiber, and I'll tell you why in a second here. When you buy carbon fiber, it has a mysterious property to it that no one tells you about. You have to learn it on your own. And if you don't, you'll experience what this fellow did. When you hold a piece of carbon fiber that you're going to use for a bow in a North American fighter kite, a diamond derivative shape, if you hold it and then just attempt to twist it around its axis with your fingers, you'll notice, even though it looks round and smooth, that the rod will not move smoothly as you rotate your fingers trying to make it move around its axis. It jumps. It sort of like resists rotating, and then all of a sudden it'll rotate a long ways. And this is caused from the manufacturing process of carbon fiber rods. Carbon fiber rods are manufactured in huge volume, and they are used in multiple industries. They are not designed to be perfectly round, perfectly uniform in their stiffness or any other quality. There are tolerances that manufacturers accept and don't tell you about. And I'm not suggesting they should tell you, but they don't tell you. And one of the qualities is this roundness or out of roundness of each piece of carbon fiber. And each piece is different. The degree to which it'll jump will be different. How many times around its axis it will jump will be different piece to piece. The important thing, though, is that when you install it in a kite, that you have already attempted to twist the rod around its axis to find the location where it seems to be stronger in its desire, I guess you would say, to be in that orientation. And then install it in your kite. And this is the reason I use a bow setter, or one of them. This bow setter is just a piece of metal, or it could be cardboard with notches cut out where the wingtip locations are, where the bow tips are going to be located on my kite. Once I have one end of the bow in the bow setter, I rotate with my fingers around the bow around its axis to find where it will jump. And where it jumps, once it's there, I install it in the other notch for the other wingtip, and then I know that the orientation of that bow is correct based on this particular piece of carbon fiber I'm using. Now, a flat piece used for the spine is automatically oriented when you use it in its wide dimension. It doesn't mean that it is always going to be perfect, because it isn't. It has been manufactured in the same way with a range of tolerances that cause some slight distortions in it. But it is less noticeable with flat carbon when it is used as a spine, for example, than it is in a piece of round carbon rod used for a bow. So a bow setter is a really good tool. That's what I use it for, is to place the tips of the bow at the wingtips of the kite sail when I'm building it. But if I'm building a rectangular kite or a square kite that have several pieces of round carbon in their structure, then I have even a more complicated problem. And I developed a way to deal with it that has really helped me overcome what this fella experienced. And that is that you have two kites that are the same. One doesn't fly and one does. Why? Well, in a buka, there's a crossbar, two of them, a spine, and a leading edge spar that is tensioned when the kite is flying, before you actually attach it to your flying line and put it in the air. You tension the leading edge. That's how they fly. But because it uses carbon fiber rods, I had a problem trying to figure out how to prevent this orientation problem from causing the kite to fly or not fly. So I use thin wall plastic tubing. This is heat shrink, that's unshrunk heat shrink tubing. In one piece, I use three pieces in a rectangular or square kite, like this. One piece of tubing, I put a pin through it, and around its center I poke a hole directly through the wall of the tubing. Now with that, I take the piece of carbon I'm going to use for my leading edge, I put that into the tubing and poke it through the hole I just made. So it sits similar to this. Now it will hold the spine. That's what this one is going to hold. It'll hold the spine in position once I get it set on my kite plan. What I do next is put a similar piece of heat shrink tubing on each end of the leading edge. And here I don't put any holes in it, I just put it in here. And this tubing is, you want it, the inside diameter to be large enough so that it easily slides on whatever bow or whatever carbon fiber rod you're using. So now if I'm making a buka, which will have spars like this, or they'll be, crisscross spine and a leading edge, I start with the spine, and I install the spine into the loose end of the piece of tubing. While it's in there, I hold it by the other end and twist it with my fingers to find where it jumps to, and I keep it in that orientation. And that's that. Now, if I were making the kite right now, I would put a small piece of masking tape on it in order to hold it in place until I'm ready to actually glue or tape it to my sail. The next thing I do is I insert in one end of the leading edge tubing my crossbar, and I put it in there about halfway, and I just bend it because the tubing is very flexible, and the tubing here is used, I'm using it really as a guide, or maybe as a jig, you could call it, because what this allows me to do now is to do the same thing I did with the spine. I can twist while the crossbar is in the tubing. I can twist it and find where it jumps to, so I know the correct orientation, and then I would put a small piece of tape there. And I do the same on the other side. Now, once all these are positioned and oriented correctly, then I won't have a problem with the kite not flying as a result of the carbon fiber being oriented incorrectly. So I would position it like this and like this, and each piece I would put a piece of masking tape down and have the position of them correct before I permanently bonded them to my sail material. And so these little pieces of tubing I leave on the kite. They're so lightweight they don't really make any difference. They're not strong or anything like that. They're strong enough to do the job that I want them to do. And once they're done, I keep them in place. I just tape over them or glue over them or fold over the hem over them, pretend they're not there. And this has saved me from having a buka or a square kite that I thought would fly well, but doesn't fly.